So let's talk about progress, points and velocity. Again, a concept that is not particularly difficult to get a hold of, but if you've never done it before, you got to get your brain thinking in this mode. So, in the real world, if you have a customer who's paying you to do stuff, they can reasonably ask, what will it cost and how long will it take? And in plan and document methods, as we remember, a lot of work goes into those first couple of phases where you basically are developing this master plan according to which everything in theory will be done, although it often doesn't work out that way. But in Agile, if you're sort of doing things as you go in small steps, how do you estimate the overall cost of a project or when it's going to be done? And can things like user stories be used as a way to do that? Can we use them as the unit of doing work or the unit of productivity? In fact, Pivotal Labs, from which we steal many good ideas that we try to foster in this course, we asked them at one point, well, when you work with a client, because they build software by and with their client very much in the style that you're going to do. They have a team that becomes, in some sense, an appendage of the client and learns enough about the client's business to really become a partner in making something work for them. And what do they not do? They don't say, OK, give us the list of features you want. We'll come back with a date and a number of dollars. That is not how Pivotal Labs gives estimates. Instead, they say, we will work with you, the customer, because we're partners in this, in the most efficient way that we know how, that we've developed this methodology around Agile and planning and so forth. And they have a sort of an orientation with the customer where they explain to the customer what we are going over right now. Like, this is the way that we're going to work together. Every week, we're going to get together. We're going to brainstorm about features. We're going to show you some sketches. We'll give you estimates for how long those week's features will take to be done. Ideally, they'll be done that week. And then they have another meeting to sort of learn the customer's business and scope the project. Mostly what they're trying to do is identify elements of the project that are not like any project they've ever done, because those are the ones most at risk. For example, if the customer's app needs a login flow connected to login with Google, they've probably done that enough times that they have a good sense of how long and how much effort that takes. But if the customer needs to integrate their app with some legacy system that has been running in the basement since 1985, who knows what that entails, right? That might be easy or it might be a nightmare. So you try to identify places that are least like anything you've done before. And then the engineers sort of go off and they do some estimation based on the same techniques we will use. They've just done it a lot more, so they've gotten very good at it. And then basically they just kind of give you a time window based on how many sources of uncertainty they had. So the process they use is very much the process that you're going to use. It's just the first time you use it, it feels weird. Okay? But it's real life. And what they come back with is they take the sort of pessimistic version of their estimate and they say, we think it'll be about this much. But it's not a binding contract where, if we don't deliver everything by that date, then you get to fire us. Right? So part of what they do is try to help the customer understand that to the extent that this app has specific, unique needs of that customer, that's where the uncertainty is, and that's where their commitment is really about the way that they work and having the customer be engaged with them, not about, we're going to focus on a contract being signed that says what we're going to deliver in how many weeks. So how do they and how will we measure productivity? Obviously, just doing sort of number of stories doesn't really work because some stories might be a lot less complicated to implement than others. So instead, we'll do something very simple. We're going to give each story a number of points, and that will be your team's estimate of how complicated or how difficult that story will be, how much effort it will require in order for that story to be done. There are many different ways to do point scales. Some people just do linear, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Some people do geometric, which is what we recommend, which is 1, 2, 4, 8. Some people use Fibonacci series and other interesting things. But basically, the reason that we like the geometric scale is it really reflects the risk you're taking on uncertainty. People ask, like, how much is a point? Like, is a point, 2 hours of a coder? Is it 2 hours of a pair working together? There's sort of no fixed definition of what a point should be. The important part is that everybody in the team agrees on what it is. So a guideline might be something like, if you're doing pair programming, a pair of people who are working together for a 3-hour or 4-hour programming session, that's 1 point. And maybe that'll be different on different teams, but the goal is over time, as your team sort of gets to know their working style, you can stabilize what a point means to you. because this is what you're going to do when you do planning meetings, which I'll describe in a moment. So a one-point story, like when I am doing pointing for myself, for me a point is if I sit down and plan to work for 2 or 3 hours, I can finish it. Maybe it'll be 4 hours. Maybe it'll be a little more. Maybe it'll be a little less. But I won't need to give up and come back to it tomorrow. So for me, 1 point is 1 coding run at the keyboard. 2 points is like, OK, maybe it's like most of a day of work with a lunch break in between. Hopefully, I don't have to carry it over to the following day. That's 2 points. 4 points, once I get above 2 points, I'm really admitting to myself that I actually don't know how many points it is. If I can sort of imagine how I'm going to spend my time for a point or for a 2-point story, but a 4-point story is saying, OK, even like if it goes beyond 1 day of programming, do I really know how I'm going to be spending, if I'm doing 2 days of coding, how many hours of testing is that? How many hours of debugging? How many hours of looking up stuff on the internet to learn how some library works because I've never used it before? So I like the 1, 2, 4, 8 scale because it forces you to confront that if you say 4, you really don't know. If you say 4, you should really be breaking down the story into pieces until you're comfortable with those pieces being like 1 or 2. If you say 8, we will disallow it. We're going to try to configure the tool to forbid you from doing 8-point stories because you have no idea how much 8 points really is. I don't think anybody really does. It's the problem with software. So over time, the goal is that your team will get to where you sort of get to know each other's skills, and 1 point will have a pretty consistent meaning across all the people on your team.